Let's begin with the word of prayer. Dear Father in heaven, we are thankful for this morning. We ask for your Spirit's presence as we open your word together. Look at the book of Ezekiel once again. And we know, Lord, that there's things hidden in your word, things that we need to know, that we need to share with others. And we just ask for your enlightenment. Be with each person in their personal study and the struggles that we have on this planet. And we ask, Lord, that we can be drawn closer to you and that you can help us to keep thy laws. And we thank you for hearing our prayer. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Now, we're just going to do a little bit of a review of kind of where we're at, because we're basically at the end of Ezekiel 48. And we spent a lot of time on Thursday going over the tribes and the layout of the camp around the sanctuary, around the wilderness tabernacle. And does anybody remember some of the things that we learned from Thursday? I don't know if people can remember that long ago.
Okay, so when we're talking about that, there was some differences as to how the camps were laid out, both around the tabernacle and then as Ezekiel is presenting this.
Right. Now you had sent me an email with an Excel sheet layout,
Along with a bunch of notes in that workbook. Yes.
Yeah. So one is you'd gone through here. Can I share that then?
Of course.
I'll share that. So you had a list of the names of the children, which really gives us 14 names, just because Joseph is represented, and also Manasseh and Ephraim.
Right.
And then you looked at, who was their mother. So
correct.
Like that. And then what their name means. And then the list of the 144,000 in Revelation chapter 7. And then
correct.
You note that Dan and Ephraim aren't mentioned. So that's your sheet number 4.
Correct.
Was there anything else about that you wanted to? I mean, that you noticed when you put this out, when you worked on this?
Well, what I was dealing with was to address that we may be able to line up the names to make a statement. And there's been a couple of people who have done this in the past. I'm finding other things that we may need to look at, because we know that there's nothing unimportant that is presented in the Bible.
Yeah.
Now, part of the reason why I had that second list on the 144,000 out of Revelation is noting the birth order, but also noting the difference in how these gates are going to be approached versus what we were talking about here when we get back into sheet number 1, as to how these gates were laid out both around the tabernacle and then in this temple.
Yeah, so it's helpful to look at that as a reference sheet. Now, I also have a list here. I'm going to stop sharing this and share this other list. Now, this is a Hopefully you can see this well enough. It should show up okay. Yeah, these are the names of the sons, and the same idea, who the mother is, but I have the dates when they were born, and then I have the names as well. So some of them are a little bit different, because if you go as in the order that they're born, see, son, God has heard, joining to praise, judged my struggle, a company or troop, happy reward, gifts, let him add, son of my right hand. So those are the names that I have. And I have where it shows. Now, they're all born in a period from Reuben to Joseph in a period of 7 years. And then Benjamin's born later. I think I have him 12 years later. Though we don't know specifically when Benjamin was born. There's just inference, but about the time he was born. But anyway, this is just the list that I had. And one of the things interesting about this is that, there is, if you count Dinah, there was 12 children born that are named in a period of 7 years.
Right.
Benjamin's born later, so that 12 times 7 shows up, and we know that Jacob was 77 when he began working for Laban, and then he got married to 2 women when he was 84, and then he had 12 sons by the time he's 91.
11 sons by the time he's 90.
Yeah, 11 sons and 1 daughter by the time he's 91. Yeah, and then I have Benjamin born 12 years later. Now, I think if I remember back, I chose that. I think it's 12 years. Is that right? Yeah.
What does AM stand for?
Anno Mundi, in the year of the creation, right?
Oh, okay.
From creation. Yeah.
Got
Yeah, so I have them 12 years apart. And so that would be significant, that number 12 from Joseph to Benjamin. But some other people choose a different length of time. But that seems to be the most common, that people place it, that it would be about 12 years. And that, so when Joseph was sold into slavery, he was 17, Benjamin would have been 5 or something like that. But there are some people who argue that Benjamin was born even after Joseph was sold into slavery, which doesn't make sense to me. Different people have different ideas. So,
well, Jacob left Laban after serving him 20 years.
yeah.
So Jacob would have been 97. Okay, at that time.
Yeah.
And so, if we understand, Joseph would have been about 6 years old at that there time.
Yeah.
Okay, so then he leaves Laban and goes into the promised land.
Yeah.
So, and then there's the incident. I think it's sort of, he's still kind of, I don't think he's in it that long before Rachel gives birth to Benjamin and dies. I think he's on his way down and he goes to Bethlehem.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's going to be, I think 12 years might be a wee bit long.
Yeah.
I would say about,
Yeah.
maybe about 16 years.
It's sometimes hard to know exactly how long things are between, because sometimes they just, it's just the way that they write it. But yeah, it's not well known. I just put 12 years. So I'm saying there's no way that I know how long it is. It could have been shorter. But anyway, that's what I put at the time in the research that I had done. So here, I'll get back to your, Dwight, to your chart, because it had a bunch of other information. Now, we also had, this was the layout that you had worked out with the tribes around the tabernacle.
Correct.
And so, because there was different options, so we had drawn them out there on how we would do that. Yeah, so here you have Gershon, Merari, Kohath, and Moses and the priests around the tabernacle itself, and then the tribes around the outside. And I think it started with Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Reuben, Simeon, Gad, Ephraim, Manasseh, Benjamin. Or did it? Dan, what was the order they put them? Dan, Asher, Naphtali. I think that's the way they did it. That's the way they described it, right?
Correct.
And so the question is that the order that we do it? This was sort of my suggestion. I think that was the one I liked,
Right.
where you've seen other ones where they place them in different orders based upon, yeah. So this is, because this is Ezekiel's. And what's this one here? This
Okay, when you're looking at this,
yeah,
what I had done side by side, left and right.
okay.
I had,
So left and right up here.
correct, left and right. I was laying it out so that your ones on the west, you have Benjamin, Manasseh, and Ephraim. But if you take a look at that, okay, go back to, there you go.
Yeah.
You also see that I have Benjamin, who is the 12th son,
Yeah,
and then Manasseh and Ephraim in birth order were the 13th and 14th, but actually grandsons. But they
Yeah.
were counted as being Rachel's sons.
mm-hmm.
And if you then look north and south, you have on the north of that one, you have the sons of Bilhah and one son of Zilpah,
Yeah,
which was Leah's. And then at the south, you have one son of Zilpah, which was Gad, the 7th son born.
yeah,
And then Reuben and Simeon. And that's different from the way that Ezekiel laid out his gates or his tribal layout,
right.
because north and south for Ezekiel's are all Leah's children, and the east and west would be all Rachel to the east and Bilhah and Zilpah to the west.
Okay. Yeah. So on the right side here,
Yeah.
This is which one is this? This is, because you got the numbers here, 1, 2.
It's the
It's
same
just
thing.
describing the birth order.
Correct.
Okay. And then this one down here,
Same thing.
but which layout is this?
This is all Ezekiel. It's all Ezekiel 48.
But in Ezekiel 48, he doesn't put him in this order, does he?
Yes, he does.
Oh, for the gates.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Right, which we're going to be studying. That's the gates layout.
Right.
Okay. Now I see what you're talking about. Yeah, so the order is different for the gates.
Yep.
All the
Yeah. When you go back, when
Rachel
you
and
go back,
Bill. Yeah.
when you
What's
go
that?
back- when you go back to the upper one,
Yeah.
what's inside of the tabernacle is you have everything that was of the tribe of Levi,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
But yet when you go to the gates and you're taking a look at this, Levi is now listed as one of those on the north.
Yeah. Yeah, so you don't have Manasseh and Ephraim.
Yeah, they're showing, but they're showing as a, you were saying they were showing through Joseph, but they're not listed in a specific anything in this with Ezekiel.
Yeah, with the gates.
Right.
Yeah.
So if when I'm looking at this on the gates, you have Joseph, of course, being right there in the position on the east, and you go Joseph, Benjamin, and Dan.
Yeah.
But you don't have Manasseh, you don't have Ephraim, and Ephraim and Dan, of course, are not listed as being one of the gates, or listed as being one of the tribes of the 144,000. So
Yeah. Now in Revelation, which you don't have here, it does have the gates of the city in Revelation as well.
but
I don't think it list them. I'm trying to
It
remember.
does not list the names in Revelation.
Right, that's what I thought. Yeah, so yeah, because it has it just says that there is in verse 12, and they had a great wall high, it had 12 gates, and the 12 gates, 12 angels, and at the gates, 12 angels, and the names written thereon, which are the names of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. So it just tells us that they have these names on there, but doesn't give us a list. So the only list we have is in Revelation 7.
Right.
For the 144,000. And we would have to assume in this case they're going to be the same names for the 12 gates. But we don't know the order.
Right. We don't have any kind of a detail on that. It just says that there's 12 gates of the 12 tribes. So is it the 12 tribes of the sons' names? Is Manasseh or Ephraim included? Dan or Levi excluded? We don't know.
Yeah. So so let's go here because I have it open. But so in Revelation chapter 12 or chapter 7, when they have the 12 tribes listed, so they're going to write them in this order. Judah, Reuben, Gad, which is not the birth order.
Right.
And so the question is, why are they in this order? Because this doesn't actually seem to be in any sort of order that I can think of why. And then Asher, Naphtali, and Manasseh. So Manasseh is mentioned,
Right.
and Joseph is mentioned. So a person would say that, because there's different ways in which you could look at this. But if you looked at the gates there in Ezekiel, and you were just to compare it to the gates in Ezekiel, the one that would be changed is Dan would be replaced by Manasseh.
Right.
Right. That's the only conclusion that you could come to if you just compared the gates. Now, if you compared it to the layout of the city, Levi now is included as one of the 12, and Joseph and Manasseh just is Ephraim and Manasseh. So in that case, you would say that Levi is replacing Dan. So there's two different ways you could look at it. Does that make sense?
It gives some points for us to consider.
Yeah. Okay. So then going back to your paper, we had as well. So we have the gates there, which we're going to study. We haven't really studied them yet. This is just another list of the names. Okay, so that's just some things you were working on. Now, the thing about it here is I had placed the tribes, instead of laid out in a row like this, I had put Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, then had the other ones laid out like this, and then you would have Ephraim, Manasseh, and then Benjamin would end up being at the end, at the back, when the tribes go out. Right. So the idea is the tribes would go out. They go out this way, leading with Judah, then Issachar, then Zebulun, and then Reuben, Simeon, and Gad would follow. The Naphtali, Asher, Dan, then Ephraim, Manasseh, and Benjamin at the end, because of the order that they were put in. At least that was my suggestion. Whether that's the case. Now, some people will put it that Judah is going to be in the middle, Ephraim's going to be in the middle, Dan's going to be in the middle, and Reuben's going to be in the middle, with their standards, right? Because that whole issue of the standards, which are represented in Ezekiel in the faces of the cherubim, and of course, differences of opinion on how to interpret that, and then understanding that this symbolizes the zodiac. So that in Ezekiel, it's describing the sky. Now, the standards themselves are basically based on rabbinic tradition of what they were. So we know that Ephraim, I'm trying to remember. So we know Judah's a lion, and that Reuben is a man, and that makes sense because of his name. And then Ephraim is an ox, and I can't remember the reason why he's an ox. And then Dan is a eagle with a serpent, or a serpent. So either one is understood as their standards. And of course, that would line up with the zodiac. And we can see that all through Ezekiel. So that's one of the things we spent a lot of time studying in Ezekiel. Now, we're going to go to Ezekiel. So. Any final thoughts on those layouts that we have and what we commented on there?
Well, as we were addressing some things as far as numbers,
Yeah.
one of the things that I looked at after I'd sent this to you, on the east side, taking a look at the numbers of the birth order.
Okay.
When you take a look at this, that you've got Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. If you take the numbers of the birth order and multiply them, you come up with 360.
Okay. So you're saying is it on the gates?
On the layout of the tabernacle.
Okay, the layout on the tabernacle. So if you take the birth order numbers.
Correct. If you take 4 times 9 times 10.
Okay.
You come up with 360.
Yeah, on that side.
Okay. On the side of the north, where you have the birth order of being, it's actually out of order, but you have Dan, Asher, and Naphtali.
Yeah.
5 times 8 times 6 gives you 240.
Okay.
If you take a look at the south, which is Gad, Simeon, and Reuben,
Mm-hmm.
you come up with 14. And I just don't know really what to do on the ones on the west, because there I'm arbitrarily placing the value of 12, 13, and 14.
Yeah, well, and Well, you also have, okay, and now the number 3, of course, is in the center
Right.
because that's Levi.
Right.
And I mean, you could take Levi out of that, and that would change the numbers of the other sons in what order if you're not counting Levi. But
Right.
yeah, I see what you're saying. And yeah, and then of course, could you call Ephraim Joseph? Because you're not really listing Joseph either.
Well, that became part of my question, because how do you then, I mean, on this one with the tabernacle, you would take, when you take Joseph out,
Yeah.
do you just list Ephraim and Manasseh as 11 each?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, and adding or multiplying these numbers together like that, whether that's whatever it would mean, I don't know.
Right.
But it's just things that we do. We look at these numbers. Now, in this case, if you look at the gates, you would put Benjamin, of course, is going to be the 12th, and Joseph is the 11th, and Dan is which number is he? He's number 5.
Right.
So
if I did all of those in the same way,
yeah,
you'd be 660 on the east,
okay,
180 on the south, 336 on the west, and 12 on the north.
yeah, okay.
I didn't go through and play the additive game, but I did take a look at this on the multiplying end.
Yeah. 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 I don't know what it would mean, but it's something to look at. There might be something from that. Interesting. Okay. Now, we had dealt to some degree, we dealt with the division of the land itself. So we looked at these strips of land running east to west. And actually I have a diagram I want to show you here too. So why is that? I see. So I'll actually share this here. So this is a diagram that somebody compares the tribal arrangement in Joshua with that in Ezekiel. So an interesting comparison here. Now, it's not the easiest map to look at, but you can look on the left side there. You can see that the tribes, of course, are divided sort of geographically into logical ways to divide them. They're not, some tribes have a lot of territory, some have less. They're sort of in different sort of positions. We know that Gad and Reuben and Manasseh, some of them wanted land on the east side of the Jordan. But our understanding is that in Ezekiel that there's no land on the east side of the Jordan. It's all on the west side of the Jordan River. So on the other side, it just shows, it doesn't really show the land and how it's the measurements. But the idea is that either they're given because it doesn't give the measurements north to south, how wide these strips of land are, from what I could see. It just says that it's going to be divided. So many tribes are going to be to the south, so many tribes to the north, and it gives the order in which those tribes are going to be laid out. Now, this one's useful too because it shows Dan, Asher, and Naphtali. You got Bilhah, son, Bilhah's son through Rachel as Dan. Asher is through Leah, and then Naphtali again is through Rachel, through Bilhah, and then Manasseh and Ephraim descended from Joseph, so those would be to Rachel, and then Reuben and Judah, which are to Leah, and then you have the temple area, which is going to have all the Levites in the center, and the land on either side for the prince, and then Benjamin next to the temple, on the opposite side from Judah, so it's Rachel's son, and then Simeon, Issachar, Zebulun, and then finally Gad at the bottom, which is Leah's son through Zilpah. So, as we talked about, this is not really a logical way to divide land. If you did that nowadays, you would get all kinds of territorial disputes going on, problems with where those lines are drawn. And it's similar to what happened when they divided Turkey and that area in the Middle East, a lot of these areas, Syria and so forth, where you have this, they didn't even take into consideration the tribal divisions in these countries. So it was created all kinds of problems, but also just the land itself. It just did this division on a map with no consideration to reality. So this would be that type of a thing. It wouldn't really make sense. So it's one of the arguments that we have that this is symbolic in some way. Now, as far as the arrangement, what do we see about this arrangement? What would be the purpose of an arrangement like this, for instance?
More equal portions?
Well, not so much the equal portions. That's the idea, is they're supposed to have an equal portion. But also here, why are they ordered in this way? Does anybody have any thoughts on that? I mean, Dan is still in the north, and Asher as well. But there's some that are quite different. So Zebulun, for instance, is in the north in the original arrangement, and he's way in the south here.
Kind of interesting when you're looking at this, that Simeon, excuse me, I'm trying to see the screen better.
Okay.
Is it that Simeon is the furthest south, or is that, no, that's
Simeon. Simeon's the furthest south in the original
okay.
division.
So Simeon would be the one that was up against, Egypt, technically. So Simeon and Judah were up against the Philistines.
Yeah. Now it's interesting because we always think of Judah and Benjamin in the south. So
Right.
does anybody know why Simeon's in the south here and what happened to Simeon? Because these are funny little details that we never take into consideration, because we always talk about the 10 tribes and the 2 tribes, right?
Right.
So does anybody know anything about Simeon?
It mentions he was scattered. Was a prophecy concerning him?
Yes, he's scattered. And so Simeon, even though he was initially given some territory, he ended up being scattered in Judah. So Judah kind of swallowed up Simeon. But yet we still talk about the 10 tribes in the north. But how many tribes are there actually in the north?
There would have been
This-
9.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's always the 10, right? Symbolically. So the Bible, even though there's this, Judah and Benjamin are in the south, my understanding is that Simeon was scattered amongst Judah and probably amongst some of the other tribes as well. Right? If we go back to that, in Genesis 49 here, I'll have to reshare this. Right. So we see Simeon and Levi are brethren, right? And in both about them, when we go to 49:7, I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel. So I guess they were scattered probably throughout the entire areas. Both Israel, or both Levi and Simeon, were scattered in Israel. But Simeon's territory was actually in the south. So it's just one of those little details that we often miss.
There's an Ellen White, she comments, I think it's from the Bible, concerning the book of the law and patriarchs and prophets.
Okay.
That I think this is relating to, obviously this is relating to Josiah. And it's, I think, so it must be, this is in the Bible she's quoting, so she says, so did he, sorry, I say, not content with doing, okay, this is like getting rid of the idols, not content with doing thorough work in the land of Judah, the youthful ruler had extended his efforts to the portions of Palestine formerly occupied by the 10 tribes of Israel, only a feeble remnant of which now remained. So did he. The record reads, in the cities of Manasseh, Ephraim, and Simeon, even unto Naphtali. So, so it's putting Simeon with the 10 tribes,
Yeah.
which kind of is in the north.
Yeah, even though it's in the south. I know this is it's just one of those things that it's sort of an anomaly that we would just assume that Simeon, its tribe was in the north, even though it's in the south. But it's always included with the 10 northern tribes. Right? So it's
Yes.
it's just how it is. And what the reason is, part of it is that Simeon would have been scattered, but its territory itself also was taken up by Judah eventually. So Simeon really didn't end up having much territory in the south over time.
Yeah, Ellen White, she says, sorry, in the settlement of Canaan, this tribe had only a small portion of Judah's lot, and such families as afterward became powerful, formed different colonies, and settled in territory outside the borders of the Holy Land.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've read that. So, but it's just something that most of us never pay attention to, right? Ellen White mentions it. She paid attention to it, but there's many people who, I've read all kinds of things and they just never notice this, right? They, dealing with Simeon. So an important point. Thanks for bringing that up, Dwight and Stephen, for the information on that. So, and then we see, of course, the handmaiden tribes are on the outsides. And then if, we have Judah next to the temple, Manasseh and Ephraim, further out, Reuben is next to Judah. And then on the south, you have Benjamin, which is, of course, Rachel's, and then Leah's, Simeon, Issachar, Zebulun. Now, when we compared this to the order that's given for the way that they're laid out. Let me see here. This was where they were laid out. I'm trying to remember what that was. It Numbers chapter 2, where they're laid up around the camp. Yeah. Right. So you can see that this is a different order in how they're dealt with. So if we go to Ezekiel 48, here I need to stop the share. Go back here. So in Numbers 2, that's where we have this layout around the wilderness tabernacle. So they're obviously laid out very differently in that they have the whole land, they're not in the wilderness, and they're laid in these strips of land, but the order in which they're described is different. So there isn't a consistency or a pattern, other than we can see that the handmaiden tribes are on the outside, and they're dealt with differently than the other tribes, right? Because this one goes Judah, Reuben. Let me see, where do we start here? Yeah, so Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, and I could look back at the other sheet again. Reuben, Simeon, Gad, and then Manasseh. There should be Ephraim, Manasseh, Benjamin, and then Dan, Asher, and Naphtali. So they're going around clockwise, but that wouldn't be the order in which they would follow as they go, or was it the order in which they followed? Because we had this discussion. Because we know that the first group goes first, second group goes second, that's mentioned. And then it says that they're going to be the third in rank. Ephraim is going to be third. So the last ones would be Dan, Asher, and Naphtali. Is that correct? Do you remember that discussion we had? Because I think that was near the end. We were looking at this. So one of my assumptions was wrong.
I think we touched on that very briefly toward the.
Yeah. So, because I had the impression that they were laid out the certain way, and that since Judah went out first, you would have that happen. But what would end up happening is Judah's group would go first, then Reuben's group, then the Levites, because they're going to be in the middle, but they're not mentioned as third, but they would be third, just because they're going to be in the middle of all this host. And then it would be Ephraim, his group, so Ephraim, Manasseh, and Benjamin, and then you would have at the end Dan, Asher, and Naphtali. They would follow up behind. So I think that was a correction that we have to make from how I had first looked at it.
Just looking at Joshua 19, the last tribes mentioned the lot. The sixth, the fifth, sixth, and seventh lot all was Asher, Naphtali, and Dan. So it sort of groups them together there.
Okay, where is this in Joshua 19?
24, 32, and then 40.
Okay, so,
So
Yeah, we-
kind of groups them together in the sort of same way.
okay. Yeah, in a bit different order, but basically the same idea. Now this is, so this is when they go in to possess the land, right? These are the lots that are given. Where does this start? Does this start in chapter allotment of the remaining land? I haven't looked at this for a long time. So this is where they show the division of the land and the areas that they end up having. So is this sort of the order in which the lots were given? It seems like.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it's another consideration. Yeah, I think I was wrong there. I said Dan, and I think Gad's associated with Asher and Naphtali in Ezekiel 48 rather than Dan
Okay.
there. So maybe I'll just have to maybe look at it and see.
So I never really even thought of looking at this chapter.
Mhm.
Well, let's just read a little bit of this. And the whole congregation of the children of Israel assembled together at Shiloh and set up the tabernacle of the congregation there. And the land was subdued before them. And there remained among the children of Israel 7 tribes which had not yet received their inheritance. So this is the allotment of the remaining land, as it says. So there's 7 tribes that then are going to be given some land. And Joshua said unto the children of Israel, how long are ye slack to go to possess the land which the Lord God of your fathers hath given you? Give out from among you 3 men for each tribe, and I will send them, and they shall rise and go through the land and describe it according to the inheritance of them, and they shall come again to me, and they shall divide it into 7 parts. Judah shall abide in their coast on the south, and the house of Joseph shall abide in their coasts on the north. And which it means coast is more border than coast, but that's just the word they use. And ye shall therefore describe the land into 7 parts, and bring the description hither to me, that I may cast lots for you here before the Lord. But the Levites have no part among you, for the priesthood of the Lord is their inheritance, and Gad and Reuben and the half tribe of Manasseh have received their inheritance beyond Jordan on the east. So what is this telling us? So we have Gad, Reuben, and Manasseh. Their inheritance is on the east side of the Jordan, right? So that's 3 of the tribes. And then who has land already? Does anybody know?
Judah, and then Ephraim. And it talks about Judah in beginning chapter 14, verse 6.
14:6. And the children of Judah came unto Joshua in Gilgal, and Caleb the son of Jephunneh of the Kenizzite said unto him, Thou knowest the thing that the Lord said unto Moses, the man of God, concerning thee in Kadesh Barnea. So what's going on here? His request for an inheritance.
Yeah, so it mentions about Judah between chapters 14 to 15 is all concerning Judah and the
Okay.
inheritance. And then 16
Right. So allotment for Judah, it's going to give that. Yeah. And then 16.
is the children of Joseph. So that's Ephraim and Manasseh. So that's maybe the half tribes.
Right. And Manasseh is going to be on the east side of the Jordan.
They're sort of a split. Yeah.
Okay. But they get land on the east side of the Jordan.
East and west.
East and west. So along the Jordan. Yeah. We'll go look at that map again that I had there. But so now we're going to have 7 tribes left in chapter 18. So if we deal with, So Ephraim, Manasseh, and Judah. Now we know Levi doesn't have any portion. So who are the seven? Well, we'll see who the seven that are left are.
I can tell you, I have them listed here. It's Benjamin
Yeah.
gets the first lot, and then Simeon, Zebulun, Issachar, Asher, Naphtali, Dan, and then
Well, that would be
Says-
seven.
yeah, that's it. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, that's the seven.
Because Gad and Reuben and the half tribe of Manasseh have land on the east of the Jordan, it says. Right. So then they're going to go through the inheritance for Benjamin, and they're going to give all that area, and then Simeon, then Zebulun, right? And then it talks about the cities of refuge. Well, actually, there might have been Zebulun, Issachar, Asher, Naphtali, and Dan, and then Joshua's own inheritance. And then they're going to deal with the cities of refuge, which are for people who have committed manslaughter. And so it's going to deal with all this division. So, but it's interesting that there are 7 tribes that they have to cast lots for. At least I think it's significant that it's 7.
Yes.
And so in dealing with this division of the land here in Ezekiel 48, there's just definitely a lot of differences about what happens. I mean, I can't see much similarity other than that some of the tribes that were in the north are still in the north. But it definitely has moved things around. So if we look back then at this this diagram, which I'll go back and share. We can see there you got Manasseh, part of Manasseh. Manasseh also has territory in west of the Jordan, but Manasseh has territory on this side. And Gad and Reuben are on the east side of the Jordan. Naphtali and Asher up in the north. Now it shows Dan down here. Now there's the city of Dan is in Naphtali, but the tribe of Dan is along the coast near the Philistine border. Right? But later, Dan is going to be in the north. Now, Stephen, do you know much about the relationship between the city of Dan and the tribe of Dan? Or is there a relationship? For
I don't
anybody?
know. I haven't considered.
Yeah. So,
The
because
tribe,
what's
yeah,
that?
Dan eventually moves north, doesn't it?
I'm kind of thinking that that's what ends up happening.
Yeah, I think that's my mind that it somehow they move northwards.
Yeah, that's my understanding of it, but I don't know if that was just an impression that I had because of the city of Dan, because I believed that the city of Dan was connected to the tribe of Dan. But I don't, it's something I'm going to have to look into. But definitely Dan ends up in the north later, and Asher and Naphtali. So I have a feeling that Dan ended up taking territory up in the north. And yeah, Manasseh and Ephraim tend to be here more in the center part, Reuben and Judah. And then, of course, this temple is not in the area of Ephraim, right? This is, south. So it's in the area of Judah. So it's very similar, except you got Benjamin south of Jerusalem here. They're assuming the city's Jerusalem, and Judah north, where it's the other way around in the original division of the land. Now, also Benjamin ended up becoming, part of the southern kingdom because it was around the temple. And then Simeon, we already took note of. It's still going to be in the south, but you're going to have Issachar and Zebulun, which were sort of in the north, sort of mid-north, and then Gad, which was obviously to the east of the Jordan, is now going to be the most southern. I don't know what it means, but it's definitely something that we have to take note of. So there are some things about it that we've noticed. There's probably more to notice. Any more comments on the division of the land itself? So now we have the gates of the city. So we know that these gates, we actually went through them already. Now, why are these gates both here in Ezekiel and in the book of Revelation? Why do you think there's these 12 gates? And we're going to deal with the measurements as well, which we kind of looked at. Would this be common to have this many gates in a city?
Well, it might be, but let's remember in Jerusalem, where you had the gates coming toward the temple,
Yeah,
you had north, east, and south. I don't think they had west gates.
the gates coming into the area of the temple area. Yeah. Now, of course, that wouldn't be the city itself. That would be the
Right.
temple area. Yeah,
Right.
so they had the north, south, and the east gate. And normally what you would see in cities is the idea of 4 gates, to come into each side of the city. Now, of course, one of the things about a gate is they were expensive. I mean, they were difficult to maintain. These would be protecting you from your enemies, and you wouldn't want to have a bunch of gates, but you need to have gates on various sides of the city. And there would be some minor gates, which sometimes would be called gates, but would be much smaller doors. And then there would be your main gates in which, armies could go out of a city. So gates were very important. Now, what about the symbolic idea of a gate? Because we see it in the temple, these gates. What is the importance of a gate?
To allow access.
So it allows access. And so what does it symbolize, prophetically? Because I don't think we've talked about this yet. At least not directly.
No, we haven't talked about this.
But we know that gates have been shut, right?
Right.
And the
Like doors have been shut.
right, and doors have been shut, right? So when we deal with the idea of access, which is what a gate is, but gates can be open and they can be shut. Now we know that, for instance, when Babylon was conquered by Medo-Persia, the two-leaved gate, which was in the center of the city, which had access from the river, that gate was opened so that when Cyrus's armies entered into the city through the river, they could just have access into the gate, into the city through that gate. So gates are there to protect, but they're also there for access. So it's something that can be open or that can be shut. Any other thoughts about that?
Not at this point, no.
Okay. Now, of course, we know the idea of a close of probation, which is the shut door. So a gate and a door are very similar. I don't think they're actually different. I think I looked this up, and sometimes I've seen the word gate and it was just the same word for door. Let me see here. Yeah, so we go here. Yeah, so it's the same word, sha'ar, an opening that is a door or gate. So we're not looking at something that's different. A gate is a door. So we have these doors into these cities that exist. And we know we have the door to the heart. And, Jesus stands at the door and knocks at our door. And we also know that there was the door to the ark. And that ark, that door was closed on October 22nd, in my chronology at least. That would be, I'm trying to think of the year, 2390 BC, if I remember correctly. But it was October 22nd. And it says it's the 10th day of the second month, but it would have been what we call now the 7th month on the biblical calendar. So it was the 10th day of the 7th month, October 22nd, that the door to the ark was closed. So we have this idea of a closed door. What about the door that's closed to the wedding that Jesus talks about? The parable of the 10 virgins.
Basically, wouldn't it be the same thing?
Yeah. So now we took the parable of the 10 virgins. When was the door closed in the parable of the 10 virgins in Millerite history?
October 22nd.
It was closed October 22nd. Now, I don't think it's that popular in Adventism today that the door was closed on October 22nd, 1844. I think that's kind of not really understood much by Adventists. But Ellen White's quite clear that there was a shut door on October 22nd. And where else does she label a shut door?
On April 19th.
Okay. I wasn't thinking of that so much. But she talks about a shut door in Noah's day. Does anybody else know where she talks about the other shut doors? So it's interesting. So let's go here.
Passover,
Okay, Passover.
maybe. I'm just trying to think. Because they went into the houses and shut the door. They weren't allowed out of the door during the Passover.
I'm just trying to find the quote here. I had a James White quote, but I want the Ellen White quote. Okay, I have to find this quote now. So this is one place. It's in First Selected Messages, page 63. She says, for a time after the disappointment, here I can actually show you this. She says, for a time after the disappointment in 1844, I did hold, in common with the Advent body, that the door of mercy was then forever closed to the world. This position was taken before my first vision was given me. It was the light given me of God that corrected our error and enabled us to see the true position. So I'm not sure how many people are familiar with the shut door, but the idea was that the door of mercy was closed forever to the world on October 22nd, 1844. That was the original position that they had. But this was corrected by God. Now she says, I'm still a believer in the shut door theory, but not in the sense in which it was first employed, in which we at first employed the term, or in which it is employed by my opponents. So people at that time were claiming that Adventists, and Ellen White in particular, had supported a shut door and that she was shown this in vision, right? So this was part of the issues that people had as this criticism of Ellen White, that she had had visions that supported the shut door. So this was a big issue at the time, because now they didn't believe that the door was shut to everyone, just that it was shut to those who had rejected the light of the midnight cry. She says there was a shut door in Noah's day. And to me, that was very significant when I found it was October 22nd that the door to the ark was shut, that it was the 10th day of the 7th month. And there was at that time a withdrawal of the Spirit of God from the sinful race that perished in the waters of the flood. So this withdrawal of the Spirit of God from the sinful race, why is she placing this here with the shut door?
Well, at the time in Noah's time, there was such an attitude that he was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
That if the withdrawal of the Spirit of God had happened before, I think that there would have been issues for Noah and his family.
Yeah. And I think it's significant, and maybe this is kind of what you're saying, that God isn't just shutting this door arbitrarily.
No.
That people have closed their probation when that door is shut. And this is something that Ellen White's really clear about when she talks about the close of probation, that it's not just something that happens and you're not aware of it. You actually have made a decision. And so when Christ closes probation on the world, he is declaring what is. He's not just arbitrarily shutting a door.
Well, the manuscript 17 of 1885, in paragraph 10, it's pretty specific.
Okay, so that's in the manuscripts.
Yeah, manuscript
You just read
17.
it. It's hard for me to get to those. Okay. What does it say?
To quote it, there was a shut door in Noah's time. There was a shut door to the unbelievers in the destruction of Sodom, but an open door to Lot. There was a shut door to the inhabitants of Tyrus, a shut door to the inhabitants of Jerusalem, to those who disbelieve, but an open door to the humble, the believing, those who obey God. Thus it will be at the end of time. Those that are ready went in with him to the marriage, and the door was shut.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good quote. So what's the reference again?
Manuscript 17, 1885.
Okay.
Now, if you want, I can copy that and email it to you.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Yeah, and this kind of says some of the same things, but I really like the way that quote puts it. So God himself gave the shut door message to Noah. My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his day shall be 120 years. And so that was actually the first time prophecy in sort of an explicit way. There's some that are implied earlier. So that 120 years that Noah built the ark. There was a shut door in the days of Abraham. Mercy ceased to plead with the inhabitants of Sodom, and all but Lot, with his wife and 2 daughters, were consumed by the fire sent down from heaven. course, his wife turned to a pillar of salt, so wasn't good for her. But they weren't destroyed. So God had brought them out of the city before it was destroyed. So the ones that were destroyed, Ellen White refers this as a shut door. There was a shut door in Christ's day. The Son of God declared to the unbelieving Jews of that generation, "Your house is left unto you desolate." Looking down the stream of time to the last days, the same infinite power proclaimed through John, "These things saith he that is holy, he that is true, he that hath the key of David, he that openeth and no man shutteth, and shutteth and no man openeth." And this verse is, of course, quoting Isaiah 22. I've dealt with this quite a bit in other studies. So this idea of this close of probation, that there's an open door and there's a shut door, I think that's what's really nice about the quote that Dwight read there. "I was shown in vision and still believe that there was a shut door in 1844. All who saw the light of the first and second angels' messages and rejected that light were left in darkness. And those who accepted it and received the Holy Spirit, which attended the proclamation of the message from heaven, and who afterward renounced their faith and pronounced their experience a delusion, thereby rejected the Spirit of God, and it no longer pleaded with them. Those who did not see the light and had not the guilt of its rejection, or had not the guilt of its rejection. It was only the class who had despised the light from heaven that the Spirit of God could not reach. And this class included, as I have stated, both those who refused to accept the message when it was presented to them, and also those who, having received it, afterward renounced their faith. These might have a form of godliness and profess to be followers of Christ, but having no living connection with God, they would be taken captive by the delusions of Satan. These two classes are brought to view in the vision: those who declared the light, which they had followed a delusion, and the wicked of the world, who, having rejected the light, had been rejected of God. No reference is made to those who had not seen the light and therefore were not guilty of its rejection. Now, of course, we have had a shut door in our time. So when was the door shut in our time?
With Parmenides and Tess.
Okay, so particularly, where was it shut? Yeah, I would agree with you there.
November 9th,
Okay,
2019.
so we have this date of November 9th as a shut door. Do we accept that as a shut door? Still,
I do.
well, yeah, I do too. But how was it understood in the movement? Because that's one thing that was really not clear. Now, Jeff did put September 7th as a significant date. Would you mark September 7th as a shut door?
What about the beginning, as the beginning of the shut door?
Okay. Now, we could also go back to 2014. What happened in 2014 that would be a shut door? And what door would it be that was shut? If it is a shut door.
Did that have to do with the book of Joel?
Okay, so there was this issue over the book of Joel. Now, I still think, from my perspective, that the issue wasn't really the book of Joel. That became the ground upon which the battle was fought, so to speak. Because the issue, from my perspective, of somebody who at that time was still really new to the message, that it was more a territorial battle over tithes. But maybe that's just my perspective. But from talking to the people like Jamal and Emiliano, that seemed to be one of their main complaints, is that the money was all going to Arkansas, to Jeff, and it wasn't going to their ministries. And what was the other issue that arose as well?
Well, as far as Kevin Howard and Dario seemed to be concerned, it was they wanted to use the Protestant commentaries to determine who the insects were in Joel.
Okay, yeah, so there was definitely a methodological disagreement. There was also the issue that arose regarding public evangelism,
Right.
right? So that was another issue. And why was that an issue? Because that was related to what I was talking about, dealing with the tithe money.
Well, on one side, they wanted to be out evangelizing without really having a cohesive message. And on the other side, it was, we need to understand our message. We need to take this message to heart before we're out trying to proselytize or evangelize anyone else.
Right. Now, the reason why they wanted to do evangelism in some of these ministries is because by getting new members, they would have people who would be able to be loyal to them and pay tithe to them. That was my perspective. You know, maybe my view is wrong, but that seemed to me to be the issue. It was expressed not directly, but sort of indirectly by Jamal and Emiliano. So both of them sort of expressed that idea, but they didn't say it as explicitly as that. They sort of just implied it, because the idea was they wanted more money. That was my perspective. But anyway, it was, so the issue of the shut door, because getting back to this issue, because that's what we're talking about. So there was a shut door. So why would we put a shut door there in 2014 if we're going to put a shut door?
Because it was more of a division within the movement.
Okay. It was a division within the movement. Now, I actually placed the shut door as October 22nd, 2014. Does anybody know why I do that?
Nope.
Okay. So there was a camp meeting that happened in the fall. Now, there was a camp meeting in the spring of 2014. Was anybody at that camp meeting in 2014 in the spring?
No.
Okay. Because that was, well, it wasn't really the spring. I guess it was June 22nd, 2014. So we could even mark that. Now, my understanding is that this issue arose around the time of that camp meeting in 2014. I don't know if anybody knows in particular what happened, because I remember that Jamal's letter was released and we had a camp meeting in Alberta in 2014. And that's where I presented chronology, dealing with a bunch of issues like the 666 years and the prophetic mirrors and all this stuff. Not Ezekiel yet. Does anybody know specifically when that split occurred? Was it after June 22nd or before? Or around that time of that first camp meeting? Because I know that from my understanding, it was in the fall camp meeting for the first time that these people didn't speak, but that they would have spoke in the June camp meeting. But I'm not 100% certain on that. That the split happened around the time of that first camp meeting in Arkansas. But nobody here knows the answer to that, I guess, eh?
Nope.
Okay. Now, the reason why I chose October 22nd is it's in that camp meeting where Jeff presents to the movement the division that has occurred. And November 22nd is in the midst of that camp meeting. It's in the midst of the week. It's a Wednesday. And I presented my chronology there on the 20th and the 21st. I believe once on the 20th and twice on the 21st. And then the next day, Jeff presented some messages which I connect to the closed door that happened with those that had left the movement. So I take that whole camp meeting as representing that, but especially in the middle of it. So it might be arbitrary on my part, but I believe that it was in the summer when we were first informed or knew about this split that had occurred. But I think the split had been going on for quite a while, because in 2013, I know there was definitely contention going on. So there is, there's things that we don't, at least I don't personally know enough about, which I think we could probably look into. It would be pretty difficult, unless we had somebody had the notes from the camp meeting from the June 22nd camp meeting. Now we know the June 22nd camp meeting is important. Why is it important? Besides the fact it's the first camp meeting in Arkansas.
It's 3 years from the receiving of the money
Yeah,
that led to that camp meeting,
Yeah.
the building, the acquiring of the property.
yeah. So and so it becomes a symbol. June 22nd becomes a symbol within this movement, and it's connected to the June 22nd letter of Samuel Snow. So there's a symbolism in there in that 622. And we also tie it to 622 BC. And there's a bunch of 622's connections. But when it comes to this idea of a shut door, so we could look back there, if we were going to compare that shut door with a shut door in Millerite history, which door would you choose? I'm just asking people, which door would you choose? Because if you're saying that 2014 was a shut door and 2019 was a shut door, which doors would these be?
Would 2014 be more like when the Protestants chose to close their door against the Adventist message initially?
Okay, so you would take the summer of 1842
Right.
as that's what's happening in 2014.
Right.
And I would say that that's probably sensible, that it's people closing the doors themselves. Right?
Right.
Now, and we have this progressively occurring within the movement. Different groups are leaving. 2014, we have that group leave. In the end of 2016 and the beginning of 2017, we have the group from Alabama leave. And a lot of that, and in 2017, just trying to think. So in 2017, we had, maybe I'm getting this wrong, 2017. No, so in 2017, we had the group from Alabama leave, right? And before that, we had
Mark Bruce.
Yeah, Mark Bruce in 2016, at the end of 2016.
And Tayon and so forth as well.
Yeah, well, that would be later. That would be in 2017. Well, the end of 2016, right? Right, in I think it was December or January 2016. So there's this progressive movement. Then we have Dwayne Dewey in the spring of 2017. Tanya Beeman, others like that, ended up leaving over different types of reasons. But when we get to November 9th, 2019, do we mark that as being April 19th within the movement?
Yes.
Okay, why?
Because
There's a simple answer.
it's because it paralleled April 19th. It was the first expected close of probation.
Right. So it is, well, we would say that, August 11th, 1840 was the first expected close of probation, but it is connected to a time prophecy. How about that?
Yeah.
So it's connected to a time prophecy. And so because of that, in the line of the priests that we had set up, it is going to be that close of probation. And it ended up being a close of probation. So how do we deal with July 18, 2020 as a close of probation? Is it a close of probation?
I think that's more in line with what we've talked in the past, equating it with October 22nd, because there were just so many Millerites that chose to hold on to their faith after October 22nd, and the majority of them went into darkness.
Right. So when we look at the parallel, it parallels October 22nd in that, as you're saying, that one is the organization itself is lost,
Right.
right? And it's the ones who are left over are the ones that are cast out, so to speak, right? And this was one of the things that I remember Bronwyn talking about it in, I think it was just on WhatsApp or something, where it was like, well, it's always been the people leaving all the time. So sort of the argument, if we stay with the ship, we're safe, but just ignoring Millerite history, right? So the movement, people were leaving the movement all the way up to October 22nd, but the movement continued on past October 22nd, going into apostasy.
Correct.
Yeah. So that's why we would take July 18th. Plus July 18th is 187. October 22nd is 1844 is the 187th day of the Jewish year from April 19th. So the symbolism there we would have to apply. And so our time is kind of up. So in dealing with these gates, we're going to finish off this week. I sort of have a plan because we've kind of are reviewing as we're going through this, but I want to finish off the gates tomorrow. And then I'll probably start on just a general review of the outline of the book of Ezekiel and try to bring out some of the salient points, some of the main things that we came to understand, and do that over the next 3 studies. Any final comments for today?
I have something to say, but it's not related to this study, so I'll let everybody else go first.
Oh, okay. So anybody have anything to say before we close with prayer?
Not at this time.
Okay, let's kneel for prayer.
I have to say something first.
Oh, before we pray?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Does anybody have that hard drive with Habakkuk's tables on it?
The which?
They sold a hard drive with Habakkuk's tables and all of its notes. Did anybody end up buying that, or?
I have it. I have all of Habakkuk's tables, I believe. Aran, I have all of Habakkuk's tables on my hard drive you sent me, right? If Aran's there, maybe he's not there. I'm pretty sure I have it.
Okay.
I have the majority of Habakkuk's tables, but I don't know that I have all the notes. But I have, mine are not in the form that was on that hard drive. Mine were converted into MP4s.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I have all the notes. I have all the videos and all the notes.
Okay, that helps.
Yeah. But if not, we can get them.
Okay.
Okay, well, let's close with prayer. Dear Father in heaven, we are thankful for this study and for the truths that you have given us. We know, Lord, that again, there's so many things in your word, so many details that we need your Holy Spirit to help us to understand these things, to retain them. And we know, Lord, that these things are not just for knowledge, for trivia, but the purpose is to understand your will for our lives and to give us faith and confidence in your word, and to give for us to be able to give a clear message to those that are in darkness. So we just ask for your continued presence in our time of study. Be with us throughout this day and all that we do, that we may glorify you. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.